Few things in this world make me more excited than the release of a new Zelda game. My earliest gaming memories include sailing the seas of Hyrule in Wind Waker and going full Ant-Man with my magic hat and the Minish Cap. So when I heard Nintendo was remaking Link's Awakening, another Game Boy Legend of Zelda title, which I had never played before, to say I was excited would be an understatement. Following the open-world masterpiece that is Breath of the Wild, Link's Awakening would return to a smaller, more linear stage, presenting a vibrant show in both the world of Koholint and the characters that inhabit it. I only wish that this vibrance was reflected in the difficulty of this adventure. Link's Awakening is unusual. First of all, this game does not take place in Hyrule. Instead, after his ship is struck by lightning, Link wakes up on the island of Koholint, a whimsical little world away from the world, if you will. So the game doesn't take place in Hyrule. Okay, that's not that weird. Just wait. We're getting there. After you wake up, you're followed by an owl who leads you throughout the island to find 8 instruments that, when played together, wake up a fish in a giant egg on top of a mountain. See what I mean? I'm not done yet. There's also an entire village full of talking animals, and there's talking animals all around the island, and as you make your way throughout Koholint, you might notice some familiar faces. But not familiar from other Zelda titles. No, this game also has Mario characters, the likes of Goombas, Shy Guys, Piranha Plants, and, most importantly, the Chain Chomps. I don't have a problem with this at all, and I think it just adds to the whimsy of Koholint Island, and can we stop and talk about the whimsy for a second? This version of the game does a great job at reinforcing the whimsy of Koholint. The cartoony art style and bright colors make every piece of the world pop. Even the darker areas of the game, such as dungeons, caves, or the mysterious forest outside Mabe Village, feel bright and colorful, and I love it. In fact, if I had to pick my favorite part about this game, it would be the setting. The world is small but dense, and while you can explore the majority of the island relatively early on, small parts are unlocked as you collect different items. Because of this, every corner of the world feels lived in and important. You find yourself constantly going back to areas you've already passed through to collect heart pieces, seashells, or items to trade between the residents of the island, which was actually one of the most enjoyable parts of the game for me. The dungeons in particular in this game were one of the things I was most excited about after the disappointment of dungeons in Breath of the Wild. I really enjoyed the first few in this game, but unfortunately the rest fell flat. After you gain some heart containers and complete the dungeon where you can change the color of your tunic, the dungeons become trivially easy. I found myself rushing through back and forth, room to room, without really feeling challenged in any of the rooms individually. In fact, most of the time the biggest challenge of a dungeon was just finding the boss key, which sounds obvious, right? The biggest challenge is finding the boss key, that's the whole point of the dungeon. Well, no, finding the key was more difficult than the boss themselves, most of which I would take out in a matter of seconds. Most of the bosses follow the formula of hit the boss gets mad and runs around, and then you wait to hit him when he calms down again. And this just feels so boring in 2019. What could have made these fights more enjoyable would be adding extra phases to each encounter. Maybe after taking a few hits, the boss could transform or gain some new attacks, getting increasingly difficult over the course of the fight, or find a way to incorporate more than one item in a fight. Just make us think a little, Nintendo. I know it's a remake and you want to maintain the integrity of the original game, but some of the mechanics have not aged well. What I did enjoy, however, was the number of bosses and mini-bosses in and outside of dungeons. They're everywhere, and even when the fights weren't necessarily difficult, they were fun. While we're talking about dungeons, let's talk about the Dungeon Maker. Early in the game, if you visit Dompe's house, he'll let you arrange your own dungeons out of pieces, which are rooms from the other dungeons in the game. Each room functions as a square piece, and each piece can have special conditions, such as chests or stairs. Pieces with stairs connect to other stairs, but it can be unpredictable if you have more than one set of stairs, and chests are pointless because they always contain rupees, save for the last one you open, which will contain the boss key. So placing a bunch of rooms with chests feels pretty pointless when you're just waiting to get to the last one. Now, I haven't played Super Mario Maker myself, but I've seen videos and this is nowhere near as customizable, and there's no online functionality, so you can't even share your dungeons or play others. The only reason I even touched this part of the game was for some of the rewards for completing Dompe's challenges, which have you arrange a dungeon to fit a set of conditions such as unlocking a series of doors or placing rooms with chests and connecting them. Completing these challenges often feels unrewarding because more often than not, you're just given some rupees, and while the Dungeon Maker is a bit of a disappointment, I'm actually kind of excited about it because it lays the groundwork for a Zelda Dungeon Maker type game in the future. There's no way that Nintendo isn't working on that after this, and I think that the general disappointment surrounding this will be even more motivating for Nintendo to develop a Zelda Dungeon Maker in the future. Outside of the dungeons in Dungeon Maker, I also have a few minor complaints. The Roc's Feather, which allows you to jump, always requires an item slot to use, which basically limits you to only one item because you almost always want to keep that equipped. And Guardian Acorns and Pieces of Powers, which are random drop items that give you a buff, always pop up a window of text explaining that they're giving you said buff. This was okay the first time, but after hours of playing this game, I know what a piece of power does, and I would avoid picking them up just to save time with the text window. This was fine the first time, but after hours of playing the game, I know what a piece of power does, and I would avoid picking them up just to save time with the text window because I'm quite frankly already killing things fast enough as it is, and it's a waste of my time to wait for that box to come up and get rid of it, even if it's just a few seconds. I know this seems like such a cynical review, but I actually had a blast playing Link's Awakening. It looks beautiful, and I enjoyed the classic Zelda dungeon crawling that we were robbed of in Breath of the Wild. It feels exactly how it should, like a polished Game Boy Zelda experience, and I loved it. Fingers crossed for more 2D Zelda remakes in the future because I feel like they knocked it out of the park here. While I felt it was a little easy, maybe that's okay. I don't think this game is necessarily meant to be difficult. The real fun in Link's Awakening comes in the adventure across Koholint and the relationships made with its inhabitants.